Hi, my name's Howard Jones, and this week in my tutorial, or my demonstration I should call it really, is I'm working from this photograph. I don't always work from photographs. I like to work from imagination. When I do work from photographs, I very rarely copy them, in fact. It's only if I'm doing a commission really do I ever follow the photograph to any accuracy. So I often in fact work from several photos of a similar scene just so that I can compose a better design. I'm just going to go straight into this. I'm really going to move these figures around. As you can see, I have this figure partially cut off here coming into the scene. Now if I move this figure in perhaps about here, might lose a couple of these figures, make it more evident that there's somebody sat at the table here, and see if I can play with a bit of atmospheric light. Perhaps it's early morning. This was late morning I took the photo. Let's see how we get on anyway. So put my palette over there out of the way for the moment. So I'd like the idea of some sort of canopy over here, this parasol. Perhaps it comes in about here, something like that. And that'll create an interesting area where I can use some darks. And the darks seem to be in this territory. And for these short demonstrations that I do every Tuesday, if you want something slightly more, with a little more in depth, then I also release a Thursday, usually a longer tutorial through my channel. That, as I say, goes out every Thursday, so you might want to have a look at those. I run online watercolor classes from my home here in the UK, and if you pop over to howardjonesart.co.uk, there are links in this video, below this video, if you want to check this out. You can get the details there. If you fancy joining me for a month, it's 2 lessons per month. As I say, the full details are on my website, or you can email me and I can send you the full details and answer any questions you may have. It's all very easy. You can just pay online, pay through my website, and on those live Zoom classes, of course, you have the opportunity to ask me in more depth about any issues regarding any aspect of painting in watercolor, and I can usually answer most of them. I don't profess to have all the answers, but I do my best, and I have a pretty good following at the moment, which I'm really proud of. Some very dedicated students that join me every month. So, as I say, if you fancy joining in the fun, then just pop over to my website. So, as I say, I don't really want to make too much of this, of the photograph per se. I would rather just include what it is, the things that I want to include. So this figure that I mentioned that was over on the left over here, I've moved forward. Now, they're in motion. The body is sort of saying, I'm going to move the one I just put in here, in fact, and put a smaller figure over here. Like that smaller figure, the elbows are out, walking towards, almost on a sort of mission. See the calf muscle there. Don't see much evidence of the feet when people are walking, particularly the faster they're moving, the faster they're walking, the less emphasis you need to be putting on the legs, and particularly the feet, anything below the knee, I suppose. You really want to sort of make sure that you're not overemphasizing. In other words, keep the hard edges to an absolute minimum when you're painting anything in motion, anything moving. Right, I'm going to leave it at that. So, okay, let's do something warm. Get some nice warm colours out here. Let's start off with some quinacridone gold for a background. I really like some of these transparent yellows. Quinacridone gold, Indian yellow, and just create that sense of warmth. Right, using a very large brush. I'm very conscious of the time, you know, spent painting these quick paintings, because it's that's what it's all about, really. It's about painting comfortably, at a speed that is comfortable for you, but just erring towards a little too quick, if you like. If you can sort of avoid that sort of thing where it was just simply taking too long to make decisions, and because that's what the loose style watercolor painting style is all about. It's all about making decisions, often very quickly on the fly. So I'm just leaving certain areas mostly white paper, a little hint of cool up here in the right hand corner, so the light's more or less coming from the top right. I think it's important to have plenty of warmth down here in the ground area. I have these menu what do they call these things? A-boards, A-shaped boards, which perhaps I could use. I quite like the idea of that shape breaking things up there. I think I'm going to pick up a little bit of alizarin crimson just to cool some of that warm off in places. Perhaps particularly under here, perhaps. Just cool off that where these sort of parasols are. Lots of paint, lots of water. Sweep that in like this. Now I'm just cleaning the brush off here a little bit, and I'll just lift out. It's the same brush. This is a large mop brush. Can't tell you the size because they don't categorize mop brushes the same way as they categorize standard round brushes. But it's something like I'm really not don't quote me on this, but I think it's something like a 4-0, something like that. If it were, to give you a better idea perhaps, if it were an ordinary round brush, it would be something like a size 22 or 24. It would be a big round brush. So what I'm doing is I'm just, as I say, lifting some lighter areas out in this, above the canopies here, and leaving some white paper in areas that I think might be catching the light, reflecting light. So people's faces, shoulders. You've got to be careful not to leave the sort of halo thing around figures. It's better to sort of paint, if you can, as tightly around them as possible, and then if needs be at the end, there's always things you can do with a bit of white gouache just to give them highlights on their shoulders, and just warming that up a little bit further. As I say, I want some real warmth. I want to sort of show this off as being a very warm atmosphere. So warmth getting through under the canopy there. And there'll always be warmth when in areas where you're dealing with figures. Now, there are archways here. I'm not really concerned with those. It's not about that. But I'll just give them some sort of suggestion here for now. Perhaps there's another one there, something like that. Another one diminishing in scale there. Sort of a bit of perspective doing something like that here. Now I'm probably going to just speed dry this. So now I'm picking up a smaller brush. It's a size round 4 synthetic brush with a good point. And we'll just hint upon some detail here, thinking of things like the underside of the canopies. So my colours are, I picked up a little bit of cobalt blue, a little bit of raw sienna, and as I say, we're just making those shapes that are typical of the structure of these parasols. They have almost like a sort of almost spider web like sort of arms and supporting rods. I'm just gonna, there does seem to be some plants potted up in here, so just scumble those in slightly in places. Same colour, it's a sort of green mix. Often objects get, the local colour of objects often gets changed when the lighting conditions are like this. So you're not seeing the true colour necessarily, you're seeing the colour of diffused light that comes through the canopy, affecting the greens in the plants that are growing in display pots and things like that here. So now over the top, I'm just picking up a bit of that Antwerp blue with some burnt sienna. And we can outline our little A stands here. Something like this. So they have these sort of legs either side, shadow between them, something like that. We'll deal with the shadow again in a moment. Just make a little bit, some of those areas under here a little bit darker. There are a few people with slightly darker garments walking around here. Might just go a bit cooler. A bit more of that blue in the mix here. And then a nice hit of warm red. We'd assume sort of bare arms on a lot of our figures. It's rather nice weather. And I'm not painting the whole body shape there because of course there's this sort of canvas awning, or wall rather, sorry, in front of us here. You know, just quickly sort of referencing ideas from the photo. So although I don't copy the photo, I'm actually stealing bits from it to suit me, to suit the composition. A hint of a chair perhaps about here, something like that. And if you know, in terms of the colours that I'm using, I nearly always pick up my mix, it's always a mix, it's never a single colour, and that mix is usually made up of one combination or another of a warm and a cool. So the two colours that I'm using will always be one warm colour, one cool colour. So just get some warmth in this area here. Let's get a few of these faces in from these figures, these diners as they're sat at their tables. If we can see the front, if they're facing us sat down, of course there'll be this lovely sort of pale warm colour. If they're sat with their backs to us, they'll be slightly darker. Perhaps this one here, all we can see is the top of the head, slightly darker, still quite a warm colour. And we'll bring a little bit of cool into the underside of these heads on the other figures sat back there. Let's give somebody a nice sort of turquoisey. Give this person a nice turquoise shirt over here. Bit of warmth in the sort of arm areas. Bit more warmth perhaps in those figures, the faces. I'm just going to mix up a bit of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So like I say, this dark mix, it's always one warm colour, one cool colour. Ultramarine blue is my cool, burnt sienna is my warm. So just pop across here, gives some further strength to that structure under here. This. It seems as though we might have supporting legs under this canvas wall here. Our figure over here. Again, elbows out. Like this, bare legs. Try to create that movement. Have some, again, a nice sort of bluish cool garment suggestion, lower, perhaps some blue sort of coloured shorts. Get rid of that for the moment. I think I can do a better job than that. So I'll just lift that paint off for a moment until the time comes that I go back to that figure. So something like that. Okay. Take some of the intensity out of that turquoise. Hit it with a little bit of red maybe. Okay. I'm going to take a slightly larger round brush here because I want to loosen things up further. It's getting reasonably tight really, getting a little bit tight. Just put something in here for the moment that will suggest there may be script. The menu, you know, somebody's gone to the trouble in the morning of putting out today's menu. They've written it on by hand maybe. We'll see if we can enhance on that in a moment when we come back to it. But I really want to loosen things up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a warm colour, which is sort of raw sienna with a bit of alizarin crimson in it. And just get that warmth in around here. So I'm really needing, I feel as I need to change the tone and temperature. So there's I've decided I want a figure stood up over here, so I'm just painting around that figure. And I need to cool off some of that and let it all swim around nicely of its own accord. And we'll just phase this out here. Just suggesting a little bit of detail up here in the canopy. So careful how I leave the unpainted areas around my figures. Over here, I'm going to go back into these archways now, as I can probably put some further shape in there. Perhaps a nice dark warm recess for these archways. Not that warm, let's put a bit more blue in that mix. Okay, and there are little ornamental lights, quite typical of these places. Cool shadows or warm shadows? I think when the light is warm like this, I think cool shadows probably look better. So I'm making sure that my shadow colour is dominated by blue. It's got a little bit of alizarin crimson in it. Shadow from our friend sat at the table here, sat at his chair. So, lights may be, whether this wall of canvas, this canopy, sorry, this wall here should be in shadow. I think, because it can, of course, be, it can be illuminated by reflected light. So, you know, you can sort of get away with that not being in shadow. And not having to slavishly follow that that rule per se, because it's not facing the light. But what I tend to do is sort of strike a compromise. So I find a very weak shadow, and over areas of it like this, and probably over these too, sort of is place some shadow. There would certainly be shadow at ground level through there. That's pretty certain. The busyness of what's going on inside there, you'd expect to find some shadow. So just making sure I like the colour of that shadowy area here. Some shadow through there in places. Shadow on the back of this character here. fingernail down the side of the side of that head there, just to scrape something out. That's probably gone a little bit too dry for me to be able to do that. So what I'll do instead is I'll just take I'll take a damp brush, and we'll just lift the side of that, the paint from the side of that face, that head. Can't see the face, sorry, it's the side of the head, just to suggest light is picking up the person's cheek on the right hand side, their face there. We can probably suggest a couple of faces in the dark areas, just by making contact with a bit of warm red paint. And if this is fabric, you know, this maybe it's a sort of synthetic canvas type thing that they use, I'd expect to see some sort of texture, fold texture in it like that. So finally, I think we just got to sort of couple some of these shadows and things up, have them more general rather than sort of isolated shapes. I think we'll leave it. I think we'll leave it like that. Shadows of things down here like this. Great fun. I mean, it's just great. The freedom of working loose like this. But you know, there's one thing I think you've got to remember, and that is, it's you must work quickly. You have to work fairly swiftly. But you know, develop it at your own pace. It doesn't mean that you've got to go from your current speed of painting to, you know, super fast overnight. Not at all. I certainly couldn't do that. Didn't do that when I was sort of working towards it. It's something you just, the more you do, the quicker you paint, the quicker you get. And while it might feel uncomfortable and counterintuitive to do that sometimes in the early stages, you'll find that it becomes very, very natural, and almost, in fact, quite the opposite. It becomes essential to the way you work, the way you paint. And I think that's got a lot to do with. This is specific to the loose style, of course, but I think that's got a lot to do with a decision, forcing yourself to make quick decisions. Because I think there's nothing worse, there's no bigger culprit for tight-looking paintings than that. You know, labouring over your thoughts before you put you end up too scared to make a brush mark. So you should just entertain every thought that enters your head and get it down. So anyway, let's call it a done job there, I think. And we'll leave it like that. So I just put the mount around it. And there. Could go in to there's areas that I could go back into. We could make more of perhaps the advertising banners, something like this. Suggest more text in here, something like that. We could connect that somehow to the back of the painting, and just connecting areas of the painting. So that things thread through to each other. A few more of these poles, posts, poles, whatever you might want to call them, here. and perhaps a little bit of gouache to finish off. Move my mount out the way before it gets mucky. So just take my gouache from the directly from the tube like this, and perhaps one or two of those diners having a nice bit of sunshine on them from this side. As you'd expect. I think I lost my figure up here. That's okay, we could just pop him back in. Probably only needs the most subtle of inferences just to suggest there's a figure there. This time I just pick up a rigger brush. Same thing, just pop it down into the white gouache like this. There's usually lines that sort of festoon these scenes. It's where they like to hang their bunting and when they're having their fiestas, etc. Just little hits of highlights, just objects, might be metallic surfaces, maybe glasses on the tables, whatever. We just pick up the reflected light in the odd place. But I think I'm done there. I should leave it like that. Okay, thanks for watching, and to say, if you're enjoying these mini tutorials, these quick tutorials, you can pop across and have a look at the ones that go out on Thursday. Of course, if you subscribe and particularly hit the bell icon, you'll always get a notification as and when my new paintings pop up. But it's every Tuesday and Thursday, and if you want to participate in the live sessions, which are recorded and tend to be what I use to put out, they are edited versions, the ones that go out on the Thursday, of my live Zoom tutorials. So while I try to sort of offer as much information on those YouTube tutorials, there is obviously a lot more to be gained by attending the live Zoom classes. So thanks for watching. Hope to have your company at the next one.